Welcome into the WCS Coaches Show. I'm District Athletic Director Patrick Whitlock, and our game of the week this week is Franklin and Independence. And I have with me the two coaches from those respective schools, Coach Josh Adkins from Franklin and Coach Scott Blade from Independence. Gentlemen, welcome into the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Independence currently sits at 2-2, 1-1 in Region 6-6A, and Franklin's currently 1-4, 0-3 in Region 6-6A. So before we get into tonight's matchup, I just want to kind of throw this out there. Coach Adkins, we'll start with you. Any surprises so far in the region? I know we're kind of getting to like the middle of region play-ish. Anything that's surprised you?
Yeah, I would think, how well, teams like Shelbyville and Coffee County, how they were able to kind of come in, being new to the region and be able to kind of get off some region wins, both Shelbyville and Coffee on us in close games. And just, once again, making a tough region even tougher when you have guys. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the year before the season started that 6 out of 7 teams had made the playoffs. So it wasn't like you're playing, cupcake games week in and week out when it comes to region play. So I've been impressed with their competition and their play. Once again to make your team potentially ready for the playoffs. That's something where you try to schedule games that give you favorable odds to try to win those games because in your region play it's going to be a coin toss every Friday night.
Coach Blade, you've had the chance to play Shelbyville and Coffee County the last couple of weeks. Anything unexpected from them or more competitive than you thought?
No, not really. I hadn't been to Shelbyville in a minute, and really impressed with their facilities and the pride that town takes in that program. They did a great job. It was a great atmosphere. So bringing in new people that I haven't played in probably 8 or 9 years, and seeing the difference in the town support that program and the school and the community. But everything else, I mean, we expected the region to be a tough all the way through. The rest of our games are county games, so you add that extra element of the county rivalry bit to it. So yeah, it's shaping out kind of like we expected.
All right, so Coach Adkins, you had a pretty formidable opponent last week against Ravenwood. Obviously, Ravenwood's off to a very good start, a tough draw there, especially on homecoming. I know we kind of talked about that in last week's episode. But, I know anytime you lose, it's tough to really, especially as a coach, it's tough to focus on any positives. But what were some of your takeaways from that game? Anything you looked at and said, well, this went a little bit better than expected, or we just didn't get to where we needed to be?
Like we kind of talked about last week of just trying to help out the defense offensively. And then, we get, I wanted to get the ball first. We get the ball and then, first play fumble. So, it was offsides on them. And then, the very first offensive play we were able to run, it was a fumble and they scored quickly. And so it was, we kind of struggled offensively. That defense is really well coached. That whole team is with Coach Rodriguez and his staff. But one thing I told him at halftime, you were sitting there, it's 28-7. Femi doing that cartwheel, and our senior safety Lane Andrew to come in and put a pretty good lick on him, and that's why I kind of called a timeout to ask because I felt like the ball had just missed the plane, and you talk about stuff like that because they had no timeouts left, so you'd argue wasn't enough time on the clock to potentially run one more play. So a 21-7 game is a lot more achievable versus a 28-7.5. But I just told him, the scoreboard, like we talked about, don't focus on the scoreboard no matter what the situation is, and to get better. And I think, my sophomore quarterback, Ryder Gregg, he got a little bit better. I saw some leadership from, Santino Bruni and Tegan Lee on the defense, keeping the guys locked in. I thought they played a really good second half as well. And guys like Miles Putnam as receivers, talking to some of the guys like Hudson Reed and Bronx Bruce, Bruce Lowe, those guys that came out this year. But I mean, our punt game is really strong. We've done a really good job with that. Ashton Oros and Landon Atkins did a good job in executing on the snap and the kick. So, like you said, it's kind of hard to find some positives, but, looking at it, our special teams, I thought we did pretty solid. And offensively, defensively, I think at a certain place that we got better.
Now, Coach Blade, it's been a few weeks since you've been here. Last time you were here, you were scheduled to play Columbia Central. The game gets washed out, not able to make that one up. You've played 2 district games since then, a close loss at Shelbyville, and then a blowout last week in your homecoming matchup against Coffee County. Just talk about some of the positives and negatives you've seen over the past couple of weeks of your team.
Yeah, we keep going in the right direction. I mean, it's a new new leadership, new program, new mindset. So it's going to take time to get the kids fully, enveloped in that. But we're going in the right direction. We're making improvements. We're getting stronger, more consistent quarterback play. We're able to run the ball effectively last week. Our offensive line is probably the biggest source of pride. They're really a good group that is at times does really well. And our receiver group they've made some fantastic catches. We got to be more consistent there. Defense at times is playing really well, and then at times there's just a small little glitch that we're trying to massage out. So I'm really proud of the team and just on where we're going. We're just a couple of plays away from being undefeated at this time, but we are what we are, and we're going in the right direction, and the kids are still, doing the best they can to keep moving forward. And, we're excited about the last half of the season.
Yeah, Siler Green was our Hattie B's Player of the Week last week, and the team came out. Well, the offensive line came out to Hattie B's last week, and
you like how I sent out my coaches? Coach Nolan is you probably got it. He loves the hot wings.
Oh yeah.
So when we go out, it's try and get the hottest ones we can find, just to see his reaction and his face sweat and all that all that.
We gave him the top level, and he was sweating a little bit. It was I enjoyed watching.
Yeah, exactly. They sent me the video.
I was not going to get involved, but he did a great job. But yeah, it seems like a real cohesive group. So, Coach Adkins, you guys are the only ones that have played three region games so far. None of them, unfortunately, gone your way. 2 pretty tight losses. I mean, it could be a totally different script at this point. Now your backs are against the wall, so to say, trying to fight and get in the playoffs. How do you approach that as a coach, with that kind of mentality? Do things change a little bit? You more of a sense of urgency, or are you just kind of letting the guys figure it out?
I think it's a situation. We actually had that conversation. I'm glad you kind of said backs against the wall because yesterday I went into practice wearing my Rocky 3 shirt. Right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and I asked the kids, I was like, how many people watch Rocky 3? And surprisingly, a lot of them raised their hand. I was like, it's one of my favorite Rockies, Rocky's fighting Clubber Lang. And there's a part where he lost to Clubber, and Apollo Creed's training him, and he's just kind of off. He's not into it or whatever. And he's saying, there's tomorrow, there's tomorrow. And Apollo calls him out, there is no tomorrow, right? And so that's what I kind of told him. It's like, well, don't tell yourself, don't sell yourself short that there's tomorrow. It's not, man. The season's half over. We've got 5 guaranteed games left, right? I said, so you have to tell yourself, what are you willing to do today to give yourself success for tomorrow? And I felt like it kind of got them, kind of deep thought. They're first like, well, how's coach doing a movie reference to kind of motivate us, but kind of understanding that. And I think we had a really good offensive practice yesterday. Defense is still being strong. And I just keep telling the defense, man, keep doing what you're doing. We're paper thin away, and we always kind of talked about when I first got here at Franklin was the Stones Cutter Creek. Like you show up every day, pounding that rock because you don't know if it's going to be the first hit or the 1,000th hit that caused that rock to break. And I said, the game of football, and I said, heck, the game of life was like that. You're going to have adversities, you're going to have successes, and how you handle both of those situations really kind of sets the tone. And so for us as a coaching staff, I told them, we don't hit the panic button, but yes, our back's against the wall. But we know when you're back against the wall, you know where your opponent's at. It's right in front of you. You don't have to look to the left or behind you, especially in a military guy myself. You keep your eyes straight ahead and know what the objective is. And I think the guys have really kind of answered that call so far this week.
So, Coach Blade, you guys are 1-1 in the region, still really control your own destiny. I know where you stand on this, but, sometimes when you're dealing with 15, 16, 17-year-olds, they might look at Franklin's record and be like, oh, maybe this isn't as big a challenge this week. We got Ravenwood next week. Do you kind of combat that throughout the week in terms of them looking ahead? Because, again, they are kids.
We haven't put any focus on that. We know that this is to Coach's point, and just like us, there's a couple of plays that their record is a whole lot different. Same with us. So, and we also know, these kids know that these county games there's a little bit more at stake. There's a little bit more on the line. Teams seem to focus up a little bit better. And we've heard the old cliche of you can throw the records out the window when it's this type of rivalry. So, we're not thinking about that. I guarantee you. We're thinking about we're playing a game tonight, and we expect a very close, hard-fought game, and we're worried about us getting a little better from the last week. I can promise you that's what's going. That's the message we're sending, right? And then, time will tell, how much they bought into that.
So, Coach Adkins, I think it's fair to say you've probably been a little bit happier with your defense than your offense as a whole this season. Are there any significant things you've tried to change offensively in the past few weeks?
I mean, I've always lived on the principle of, keep it simple around the stupid one. And so I think, too, it's just, we're pretty simplified offensively. We'll do little tags here and there to try to give a different wrinkle, stuff they might see, oh, they always run the bubble in this play. So we'll try to tag something else to try to catch the defense off guard and that kind of mindset. But I mean, not really. It's just, it's about the reps and getting, we had a meeting and a couple weeks back, and the kids kind of talked about, one of the seniors stood up and he was like, I feel like at times, at practice, we're just going through the motions, or we're just trying to get through it and not get better. And I was like, and that was profound to me, because I felt the same way. And I was glad to hear a senior say that, and the kids kind of nod. And so it's been like, what I've noticed this past couple of weeks is that those guys have not been vocal in the past last year. They have been this year, and not like, diminishing their battle buddy. They're like, hey man, you know what to do. Like, you're better than that, and it's like, listen, the call. This is where you're supposed to go. Let's do it. And like, same thing with the offensive line and receivers. They'll have MAs at time, but you're starting to see that transition where it's less coaches holding them accountable, right? Like, I always talk about honey and vinegar approach. Like, you attract more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Same thing with kids. Like, if they mess up, find something they did right, great effort, whatever, and then do the coaching. Well, now it's at the point where the players are being more vinegar in a good way, and the coaches are giving more honey because they already got the vinegar from their teammates, which is what you want. You want a team-led, player-led team. And so I've been happy about that we're just starting to turn the way I want the culture to be at Franklin High School.
So, Coach Blade, in you've lost 2 games by a total of 5 points, I believe. 2 points to Lincoln County, and then 3 points to Shelbyville. In both those games, you had to put together some late drives to kind of try and have a chance to win that game. Do you talk to your team at all about maybe trying to start a little bit faster, or losing some focus here and there, about how you can improve on those things?
Last week I think we were up 21-7 at half, and or 21-6, and we've been there before. We had to start off faster, okay, but then there was a lull called the third period, and then we've had to come back and to dig ourselves back out of a hole. And part of changing a culture and a mindset is, I don't think the schemes in the past, if they got behind, they weren't explosive enough to come back. And they've seen over the scrimmages and through the first part of the season that they can come back at any time and we can score quickly. So we're trying to, and we did a good job last week of taking a lead and then building on it. We still think, I asked the kids in our film session, how many do we leave on the board? And they said 2. I said, you're right, we left 2 on the board. So we're still trying to control what we can control, right? I don't put any, obviously the opponents are going to line up and have schemes and things they want to do. I can't control if they're bigger, faster, stronger. All we can control is what we can control, right? And I think when we stay on that path, we're going to be just fine. But when we start worrying about things that are out of our control, and the weather, right, the other team, I mean, that's when you get kind of caught up and put yourselves in harm's way. So I like the direction we're going. There's a long-winded answer, but I like the way their direction is we're going. But this is a building process, and so each week, each practice is trying to be very, very intentional about what is our next move for the growth of this team.
So, Coach Adkins, you're starting a sophomore quarterback, right, or Greg?
Mm-hmm.
As a former basketball coach, I said for every sophomore we have starting, you can pencil in like a minimum of 4 losses. I know there's some growing pains that come with that, especially in such a tough region.
Yeah.
How would you kind of handicap that, his progression? Are there things you're trying to do to kind of help him out, keep it simpler for him? Because that's a tough assignment, stepping into this region as a sophomore.
It is, and if I did your math that way, I would be like negative 45 right now and win the win column because we play a lot of sophomores this year and some other juniors and seniors that have not a lot of experience. But he has matured really well in the mindset of like he's starting to see the game a little bit faster. He's starting to get into my head too, like what I'm looking at, and he's seeing what I'm seeing, and like. And like beginning of the year, if there's a safety, if they're in the middle of the field or on the hash or whatever, we like to do tags, and I would have to tag it in, but then like he could see it and he would tag. He's starting to see it and started tagging on himself. So stuff like that. He still has some sophomore pains, making some mistakes and stuff like that. But what I love about it is, the first half of the season, first let's say 3 games, he'd kind of like, what did I do? What do you? But now he knows, like, man, I should have handed that ball off, or hey, I really, we had this concept, I should have made that tag because X, Y, and Z, as far as like what the defense is showing us, and it's been growing pains, and Isaac Burgos too, he's been getting some reps as well too. So having 2 sophomore quarterbacks at the helm, it's definitely put a lot more gray hair on the head for sure, but I think it's worth the investment when you have kids like that because they're going to get better each rep, each game. And it's just keeping them in the fight and understanding what the true goal is. Obviously, winning football games, but if we can win football games while getting better, that's obviously the goal.
Now, Coach Blade, on the flip side of that, Matthew Horner, you guys are averaging 30 points a game right now. He's having a really solid season. Last time you were here, we kind of talked about his progression through the preseason and where he was at. How have you been happy with his progress the last few weeks, and kind of what's the ceiling for him?
The ceiling's unknown right off the bat. The ceiling's unknown, and it was 3 weeks ago. You and I were talking, and we were working on some mechanics with him. He is a big guy. He's 6'6", so it's like every little step is a big step. Like I mean, literally, like his footwork, right? So, and he's really worked hard, and he's the last 3 weeks since our last conversation, I think he's had probably the biggest gain. We talked about when that light comes on, and you could see it in practice. He's making some, he's splitting, our starting defense, throwing in tight corridors. He's making every throw. He had a throw last week that was, he was on our 47. He threw it 3 yards deep, and it was literally just a flick of the wrist. He's got a huge arm. So his potential and his ceiling, like I said, it's really untapped because all of this is while he's still learning on the job. He's never been in a program that has reads, has a progression, demands footwork. He's never stood in a pocket, and that goes back to that offensive line. The offensive line's to date has done a great job of giving him time. So his valleys are getting a little less steep, right? I think last week he was 11 for 16 and really only had 3 balls that were uncatchable. So we've cut down on that, and with that comes a running game that's starting to catch fire. So it takes off some more of the pressure on him. So, I mean, we're really pleased with his development and excited to watch him grow over the next year and a half.
So let's start talking about the game a little bit, Coach Atkins. What when you see Indy on film, or when you've seen Indy on film, most of the prep is done by now.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things going in tonight that's most concerning for you?
I think Coach Blade has been saying this whole show, like their running game with their pass game is kind of come together. When you're watching film, you're putting your data and stuff like that. And I'll be kind of watching, offense, defense, special teams. But if I see something where they're on the 30-yard line and I look and they're on the opposite 30 or the 20 or 10, I'm like, well, what happened there? And you go back because you're doing data quick before you kind of go back and watch it your second or third time. And it would be, I'm thinking, it was a go ball or something like that. No, it would be, a great run play. They schemed up perfect, a good run play that hit perfect. The back saw it, hit it good. Or, it was a simple throw that the receiver was at the right break at the right time, caught that ball and got vertical now and made an explosive play. And that's something defensively we've been, looking at all week is like, we can't just stop the run or stop the pass. Like we've got to have sound football doing our job and lining up. And defensively, they do some good things, as far as with their front and their secondary. It's a situation where, how do we line up and how do we adjust to that as far as like if our preparation of our tags and our movement and stuff like that to try to out leverage them at times is what we kind of look at because and they got a kicker. I mean, we barely practice KR this week. We do it a little bit. Like we usually try to do 10 minutes a day, but we only did 3 minutes because I still think he's kicked the ball, hasn't landed yet. Because I'm starting watching, and I have to like, where'd that ball go? And I have to rewind, and I'm like, it's not even in this. It's passed out of the back of the end zone. Which I had a kicker like that who's now kicking at South Carolina, Max Kelly. So it's like having a kicker like that as a head coach, you just don't even watch kickoff anymore because that ball is gonna hit a flag twirl getting ready for halftime, or their ball boy's chasing down the ball because he's booming it. And I'm just like, well, boys, let's take this 7 minutes somewhere else in special teams to get a little bit better because kickoff return. I think there was one, I can't remember what game it was. There was a personal foul or something happened where they got backed up, and they kicked. And when they kicked off, he still almost put in the end zone, and he was backed up, 15 more yards. So it's just like, guys, let's be. Use our time wisely.
Right.
Do kickoff return. This is how they line up. This if we get a good gust of wind or he trips on some turf that's offline or something and it stays in the field of play. This is our return. I go, but I'm a bet man. I wouldn't bet on that guy. So, but yeah, all three phases. They got guys that that make it tough where you try to look and see like where can you exploit that weakness. And to me, I don't think Independence has one. So it's going to be a good old-fashioned encountering slobber knocker for sure.
Yeah, one less thing to worry about on special teams, right? So,
Sure.
I mean, for both of you,
Well, as offensive coordinator, you're like, I got to go 80 every time versus if we
Right.
get to the 30 or 40. But yeah, takes stress away from one spot, but definitely adds to another for sure.
So, Coach Blade, let's talk about Franklin a little bit. What are some things you've seen that might be concerning for your team?
Well, they're tough. They're physically tough. We like that. I mean, they know what they want to do. But to their point, they got a younger quarterback that you can see he's improving each week. He's making better decisions, and we just know that again, you take the records out, and we also know that if number 10, if Luke Thompson's playing, I mean, he's maybe the best player in the whole league. I know he's hit and miss, but that provides a different element to the game. So, we just expect a well-coached, well-disciplined team that we know has got their backs to the wall, as far as their standings in the region, and it's a must-win situation. We know that. So, I mean, those are the things. Again, those are things that we have to be aware of. We have for the psychological part of it, but the schematically, we're all similar. We're all have sound schemes, and we just know for our purpose and our vision moving forward, we need to execute a little better than they do.
So, in terms of personnel, Coach Atkins, is there a guy that you could pinpoint that you're like, I think he's ready to have a breakout game, and boy, we sure need him to have a breakout game tonight?
I kind of mentioned early on Hudson Reed and Bronx Booslow, 2 receivers. They came out basketball players. And Coach Tiger, we've always kind of talked about, having athletes and sharing athletes and that kind of stuff. And they kind of approached me during the springtime talking about coming out. And I was like, okay, and I was, I'd love to guys have you. Like, we can talk more about it. And when it kind of became a reality, I was like, okay. And they just do things. I mean, because they're natural athletes. They're explosive with the balls in their hand. And I think we've done a really good job with Coach, Coach Akins, our inside receivers coach, and Coach McCluster, outside receivers coach, inside receiver coach, Coach McCluster, and outside receiver coach Akins. Done a really good job with those guys, get them caught up to speed where they can be in the slot or be an outside receiver. I think those 2 guys will definitely, I think can make plays for us tonight. But I still think, I'm an O-line guy at heart. I love the trenches. So I think, for us, I think it's can we establish the run? I think, like he was saying, we have a young quarterback. So, and even with a junior quarterback, when you have the run game as a play, those windows get a little bit looser, right? And so now you're stretching them. If you can stretch them vertically as well as in the box, those windows get nice and beautiful and open, and it makes those throws a lot easier and more confident to throw. So I think too, kind of getting Joseph Panea, our starting running back, try to get him going with Liam Hodges and Chase Jennings, the other 2 sophomore running backs, getting those guys involved in the game to where, it makes us tougher on offense, that we can sustain drives and ultimately score points. Because the offense, they know it. Like, we've not scored an offensive touchdown in 7 quarters now, and so that's been kind of a dark cloud over our head. But also at the same time, they've done a really good job of turning that negativity into positivity. It's like, hey man, let's not if but when. Let's put this together. So when we score, we're helping out our defense.
Coach Blade, what about you? Anybody that you're ready to just kind of have a breakout night?
Yeah, we think Eli Garlington, our running back, is like to get him more touches, get him more involved. Last week he had, I think, eight carries for like 100 yards, and
solid average.
yeah. And what that does, to Coach's point, is and I call the game maybe different. We use our pass to loosen up for the run, right, and about to the opposite, right? So our run, if we're successful running ball, now all of a sudden we crowd those defenders and it opens up our passing windows. But if they're allowed to just play out in space and with 5 guys eliminate our run, or slow us down or get me impatient, then they've done their job. And last week was a good game plan for us. We made a conscious effort to pound the rock a little bit more and take a little bit off of Matt. And what we saw was a lot more comfortable, a lot more urgent, a lot more intentional throws. But for sure makes a defense start to come in a little bit, opening up throwing windows. But Eli Garlington, we expect him, we want to get him started. We want to get him comfortable, which will allow Matt to get comfortable. But overall, it goes back to that offensive line. When those guys are communicating and doing they're comfortable, then it makes it all, go a whole lot more smooth.
All right, last question, gentlemen. Coach Atkins, we'll start with you. If this goes right tonight, you'll feel good about your chances.
I think Coach Blake kind of tested too with the offensive line. I think we've always, these past couple of weeks, we've struggled with communication at times. So I think if we are consistently communicating, whether it's the pass game or run game, our responsibilities, knowing confidently who we have to block, I think our offense will make plays that sustain drives that ultimately gets us points. But yeah, I think it's going to be up front as far as the offensive line and answering the bell to be able to give our quarterbacks time, as well as giving lanes for our running backs to run.
Coach Blade, same question.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about the offense, but our defense has done well at times, really well, and we think that's the next biggest step is for those guys to be more consistent. We feel like we're in position a lot. We feel like we've capitalized on that, and then sometimes we've just not finished. So those guys continuing to develop and continuing to work together and trust each other. We're a gap integrity defense. We're not real complicated, but I think that's like the next big step in our development is that everybody we're playing more consistent on defense, and if we can do that, this will be that'll up our chances for sure.
Well, gentlemen, we appreciate you guys being here. We expect a great game tonight down in Thompson Station. 7 p.m. kickoff, Franklin at Independence, and this game could go a long way in how the rest of the season shakes out. For everybody here, this is Patrick Whitlock, your District Athletic Director. Thanks for tuning in.